if they're just getting started into a digital content creation business or online or whatever, then the biggest piece of advice, and maybe in a more traditional business setting as well, that I can give you is get familiar with artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
This is a game changer, not only for creators, but also for process people, anybody who's producing something for sale. You can harness AI to perform and produce the more mundane aspects of within those aspects of your business, and it frees you up to use your brain power to work on your business instead of in your business.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Betsy Wuebker. It's close I'm going to get to be pronouncing it right. But Betsy started her journey getting a marketing degree, graduated and worked in some traditional marketing related jobs for a number of years. And then with the anticipation of having kids and becoming a single mom, looked for a bit more of flexibility in her schedule. So did real estate for a number of years and then started a business with a friend. Afterwards, it started a travel blog from that, and then got into some digital content creation, becoming more of a digital nomad and selling all of their blogging, so to speak. Had a surgical or a medical issue that came up that put things on pause or adjusted things for a bit, and then overcame those challenges and can continue to enjoy being independent and running the business. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Betsy.
Thanks, Devin. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely excited to have you on. So I just gave a quick walkthrough to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack a little bit and tell us a little bit about how the journey got started coming out after of college after studying marketing.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a writer and digital content creator. And like many people, I never, ever anticipated this kind of a career when I was in high school and college. It didn't even exist. I did get some feedback from some of my teachers and professors that, I had writing talent. But in high school and college in the 1970s, I had no clue whatsoever what an entrepreneur was, how I might leverage that writing skill. And it was a time of recession. And so traditional job hunting was the order of the day. So I got my degree in fashion merchandising and marketing, as you mentioned, and I considered myself very lucky indeed to just get a job. It was hilarious, quite frankly. I shared an interview dress with several of my girlfriends, and so we would have to check with each other. Do you have an interview scheduled today? Okay, then I need the dress. And I managed to land a job in Detroit, which was the big city. I was from Western Michigan, rural area. And so I packed up and moved everything and worked for an 80-store retail chain as a women's fashion sportswear buyer. And so I kind of hopped around a little bit after that. That industry is notorious for job changes. If the numbers don't come in, you're out. If your numbers do come in, you can be out. It doesn't matter. So it's pretty volatile and there's lots of change happening. So I job hopped within that industry and then moved out to California from the Midwest and worked as an administrative assistant in the legal field for a while, just basically cobbled together a lifestyle out of whatever work was available. And then moved back to the Midwest and married and started having kids. And at that point, I wanted to be more flexible. So business ownership or independent contracting provided that flexibility.
Hmm.
So as you mentioned, I sold real estate in the 1990s, and then I co-founded a successful corporate gourmet food gift basket business with a very dear friend in 1999. And our
Just out
friend,
of curiosity, how did you get into that with a friend? Was it just, hey, you both have an enjoyment of food, you thought it'd be fun to get into it, or something that the friend had an idea and asked you if you want to be part of it, or vice versa? Kind of walk us through, because real estate makes sense, and if you're kind of in marketing and in the sales and that, it's a way that you can have that flexibility. But how did you get into the aspect with the friend?
well, I wish I could say that it was very strategic and deliberate. Instead, my girlfriend's twin sister, who lived out in California, had a similar seasonal business. And when my friend described to me what her sister was doing, I said, gee, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And that was that. It was one of the most impulsive and important decisions that I've made in my life.
Hmm.
But I tend to be an impulsive person and I like to jump in and make quick decisions because I figure, well, if it's a mistake, I can always pivot. So we enjoyed owning that business. I think it was for like 7 or 8 years. It was lots of fun.
Hmm.
But, the time came move on, and we sold it, and we're still friends to this day. So everybody advises don't ever go into business with your friend. Well, you shouldn't disregard that advice if you have a solid relationship and you can set some ground rules. And we did. So
So
friendship
now,
survived.
just one question to follow up. So you did that, with the friend for about, you said about 8 years or so. What kind of made you guys decide to conclude the business, or sell it off, or otherwise exit from it? Was it worn out, didn't like it anymore? Business took a different turn, market changed, had a different opportunity, or something else? But kind of walk through how you decided to move, or to move on from that.
Well, that business, corporate gift baskets, is seasonal dependent and it's location dependent as well.
Hmm.
And my business partner and her husband wanted to relocate. And so they did. They moved out of state. And for a while, she traveled back and forth, assisting me with the day-to-day operations of the business. But we each hadn't had a Christmas to enjoy for the entire time that we owned the business. And it's like, I like Christmas. I like to, enjoy things. And so it became time to consider selling.
Hmm.
Concurrently, I had remarried and that was in 2006. And my then husband and I were thinking of ways that we could incorporate more travel into our life. We knew that we weren't going to have a traditional retirement due to personal and financial circumstances. And so we were seeking a way to supplement income and eventually replace it
Hmm.
that would also allow us to age gracefully and continue to work. So we were inspired at that time by a little book called The 4 Hour Work Week. Maybe you've heard of it. It was kind of a huge hit back then. And we were intrigued by the ideas in that book, the most prominent of which was location independence. And we said, hey, this might be a way for us to get more travel into our life, which what we wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I realized in reading that book that I wanted work to be something I did, not somewhere I went.
Hmm.
And so um, it was important to develop that means, which would be flexible and location independent, that would allow us to earn even as we aged. And so internet business kind of filled that bill. And
Hmm.
little did I know how dramatically it would play out in the future. So we started developing those businesses. The hub of our business activities was a travel blog called
Mm,
Passing Through, which is still in effect today. And then the spokes of the wheel, if you will, were different online activities such as print on demand, merchandise, selling how-to ebooks,
mm,
publishing with Amazon, uh, independent consulting gigs, small business advice, that kind of thing. So we had quite a portfolio, and the nice thing about that diversification was if something started to go south a little bit, something else would rise up and the revenue remained constant.
oh,
So
mm,
and it took a while. I mean, my husband wound up working the equivalent of a second job to get things established. In the meantime, I sold the corporate gift basket business and started devoting myself to this venture full time. It took about 3 years, and he was able to quit his day job. And we also decided that since we had proven we could be location independent by road tripping all over North America and testing out our theory,
mm,
if there's a Wi-Fi connection, then we were good to go. So we thought, well, hey, let's move to Hawaii from Minnesota. And so we did. Everybody thought we were nuts. And, the kids thought we'd be back in 6 months, and it's like, well, so what if we are, but anyway, we stayed out there for a couple of years. And in 2014, while we were living on Kauai, we uh, got the idea that we wanted to go to the Winter Olympics in Sochi. Well, actually, it was my husband's idea. He wanted to go to the Winter Olympics, and he says they're in Sochi, and I'm like, well, where's that? I had no idea. Well, it's in Russia. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, and, as you might imagine, it's kind of hard to get anywhere from Kauai. It's this little rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it's like, well, how in the world are we ever going to get to Sochi, Russia? Well, we got there by buying a package vacation to Ireland, which included flight and hotel and car and everything. And from Ireland, we jumped across the English Channel and then proceeded to travel across the entirety of Europe, mostly by train. And we had planned to go all the way to Sochi, which is on the eastern side of the Black Sea. Well, we ran into a little problem because that was 2014, and you might recall that somebody we all know decided to invade Crimea at the
mm.
time. So going across Ukraine by train really wasn't the smartest idea. And of course, everybody in the United States back home was like, oh no, they're going to get killed by terrorists or kidnapped or whatever. Well, none of that happened. We had a great time. We just flew into Moldova and then over the Black Sea to Sochi, and it was fabulous. So that awakened the latent wanderlust that we both had. And when we got back to Kauai, which is arguably paradise on earth, we still had the wanderlust.
Mm.
So we decided to throw caution to the wind, and we sold everything we had, and we became deliberately homeless. And this allowed us to travel internationally for 4 years. Now, there is a name for this. You might have heard digital nomads. Well, we might have been the oldest digital nomads ever or close to it because I was 60 years old when we did this. And we wound up traveling full time with just a checked bag and a carry-on apiece for 4 years. So fast forward to 2018, and we're in South America. All the while the business endeavors are sustaining us. We had to cobble together some, um, I would say, unusual ways to offset the costs of travel, but basically we were living pretty large on a relatively low income by United States standards. It can be done.
Hmm.
But a little glitch developed in South America, and I became hospitalized with what turned out to be a life-threatening condition. I had a pulmonary embolism, and while they were diagnosing that, they discovered that my aorta had dissected,
Hmm.
and I needed additional medical intervention. So this was in Colombia, and they saved my life and got me stable enough to come back to the United States, where I began treatment at the Mayo Clinic back here in Minnesota. And I'm happy to say 6 years later, I'm still here, not dead yet. And but it's shortened my leash considerably.
Hmm.
You know, now the travel occurs with a home base. It's no more nomadic kind of stuff. And my surgeons and doctors are like, you cannot go to all of these exotic places that might be still on your bucket list. And it's like, well, where can I go? And they're like, you can go to Chicago. And it's like, well, we're going to have to compromise a little bit on that. But basically, what I have to do nowadays is just figure out what the landscape is in terms of um, medical services, just in case. It's just like anybody else who has a chronic medical condition.
Hmm.
So, um, expanded the business a little bit into additional digital content creation.
Just before, one quick question is you mentioned that, because I think if I remember when we chatted a bit before, you had the medical issue, or that came about, kind of put a little bit of a pause on that, and
Mhm.
so I think that you put a pause or pulled back on the business. And if I'm putting words in your mouth, by all means, make sure to correct
Oh,
them. But you put a little bit of a pause on that. So walk us through, maybe, did you put a pause on that, and kind of how did you pause it, and then how did you re-engage after you got things squared away, in the sense that I think that life comes up, and sometimes when you have a business that's going along well and you think, okay, we've got it all figured out, and then something comes up, you have to adjust it or pause it for a bit. So certainly love to hear a little bit about that.
sure. Well, critical piece on developing a location independent business, in my opinion anyway, is can you set the business on autopilot? Because you're going to be running around from place to place and everything. And so you might not have the traditional 8 hours per day to work on the business. And so, a lot of people talk about work-life balance and the like. Well, I'm not a fan of work-life balance. I'm a fan of work-life integration.
Hmm.
So your business becomes part of the way that you live your life, and you're not separating it out. It's just part of the stuff that you do every day, no matter where you are. And so that philosophy served very well when I was incapacitated. The business just kept tooling along, the money kept coming in from advertising revenue and merchandise sales and the like. And so we really had very little to do on the day to day to keep things going other than monitor it. And that was a lifesaver, literally, no pun intended, but
Hmm.
it was just terrific to realize that we weren't going to necessarily suffer from a change in our circumstances. However, when COVID hit, travel dependent businesses were just basically sidelined. And so then it was really important that we had diversified all along, because the travel related portion of our revenue picture declined by about 90%.
Hmm.
So always try and anticipate these changing conditions and leverage your business profile so that if some of these unexpected things are to occur, then you can quickly pivot or concentrate on other arrows in your quiver.
Hmm. No, I think that that's smart, and it's always a balance, right? You diversify too much, you lose your ability to focus on any one given business, and maybe they all suffer. But by the same token, if all your eggs are in one basket, then it makes it difficult if something changes, whether it's in personal life, the economy, or the world, or anything else, and it can have a drastic effect on the business. So it sounds like that diversity allowed you to kind of weather that storm as you had to put some of it on pause and then also be able to re-engage. And so now you're coming out of kind of that, medical issue, and you're looking to kind of unpause and to reinvigorate it and to go further. So kind of walk us through, how did you re-engage the business, or kind of rebuild it after you had to slow it down for a bit?
Okay. Well, just let's back the truck up just a hair and remind people that a lot of times when you have a business idea and you're a startup and everything, basically what you're doing is just throwing stuff at the wall to see what's going to stick, and so you have to consider that perhaps your initial idea wasn't as great as you thought it was, but something else is working really well. And so, don't let your ego get in the way of making things work. And so, reinvigorating the business in a post COVID landscape was very, very different than what it had been just a couple of years earlier. And everybody in the travel space was reeling.
Mm,
Uh, I mean, if anybody had decided that, hey, I'm going to decimate a portion of the entire economy, I'm going to pick on travel, they couldn't have done a better job.
mm.
And so there were lots of folks, there was lots of attrition in the space. There were other folks who were maybe too stupid to quit, like me. Uh, you know, and um, the content creation piece of it also radically changed, particularly with the advent of artificial intelligence.
Mm,
And so, you've got a constantly changing landscape with AI and Google search engine results and waxing and waning social media platforms and the like. And so, it took a little bit to get reestablished and rolling again in this changed landscape. And so I think the biggest strength coming out of that was not to be married to the way that we always did it,
mm,
because that's obsolete and it's not working today. So reinvigorating the business was a proposition of looking at the landscape and seeing where the potential might lie, being in communication with peers, um, you know observing and communicating about what's working with them, and implementing those types of ideas, and keep throwing stuff at the wall and pay
mm.
attention to what sticks.
No, and I think that I like how you hit on, you can't be, while you need to have the fortitude to push the idea, or an idea or the business, sometimes you have to establish a marketplace or have enough fortitude to keep it going when things get tough. By the same token, if you aren't willing to adjust, or you aren't willing to be adaptive to as things change, it can be very impactful to the business in a negative way, and vice versa. If you're willing to have that attitude, it can be very beneficial in a positive way. So I love how you hit on that. So now catch us up a little bit, kind of where are things at today? You were digital nomads for a while. Are you still digital nomads? Are you still working on the businesses with your husband? Have you guys taken a break? Or kind of walk us through where things at today and where things headed?
Well, unfortunately, a medical catastrophe can have an impact on a relationship. And I'm sorry to say that my marriage appears to have been a casualty of
Mm,
that situation. The split was amicable, as those things go. And so what happened was we divided up the roster of activities in accordance with who was working most on what. And so the print on demand businesses he worked hardest on, and so those went with him, and the travel blog and other digital publishing went with me. And it worked out to be fairly equitable, I think. So moving forward in this changed landscape, now I'm traveling with a home base. I'm based here in Minnesota, close to the Mayo Clinic, where they see me regularly.
Mm,
And, just dipping my foot back in the water in terms of industry conferences and the like, at which I had presented pre-COVID, and just reconnecting with folks in the travel space as we make our way through this changed landscape. So, yes, I'm still traveling. I'm traveling much less frequently. I'm also building on 15 years worth of content that I've created and figuring out ways to leverage that in the most lucrative way. So, once you've established a body of work, then it can also become, okay, well, how do I capitalize on this? I've got a lot of experience and a lot of product here. And
mm,
so, do I need to reinvent it a little bit? Do I need to put it into a different medium? There's lots of ways that the content that you've created as in the digital space can be revitalized, reused, reworked, and continue to earn for you.
mm. No, I think that you hit on a lot of great things, and I think that it sounds like kind of a string or an attitude that, in a good way, throughout is that if things aren't working or there needs to be change, you have to be open to it and be able to figure out and adjust and make the business continue to work no matter the circumstances. So I love that as a takeaway, and sounds like you've a great place to be while continuing to allow you to get the medical assistance you need and be able to keep the traveling lifestyle and have the flexibility with the business. So it sounds like a great some great progress and a great place to be. So
Well,
with
and
that,
don't,
oh, go ahead.
they shouldn't, people shouldn't hesitate to accurately evaluate their assets in the business, whatever they've created or whatever they've produced, what makes the business strong, what is the business known for. Do an honest evaluation of that, and then look for unique and creative ways to repurpose those assets. It might be possible that they can earn for you in different ways than you initially envisioned when you created or produced them.
Hmm. No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice. So now with that kind of transitioning to, I always love to wrap up each episode with the same two questions. So we're going to jump to those now. So the
Okay.
first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
How long do you have? you know, I
Absolutely.
I tend to be impulsive and make quick decisions. And so mostly that's been okay, but occasionally better planning would have served me uh, 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 in in more ways than one. But I would say that the worst decision I ever made was paying exorbitant amounts of money for training from folks who inflated their knowledge and experience.
Mm,
And, that is a common thing that you encounter, particularly online, and in the travel space in particular. You've got folks like me who are digitally nomading around the world and everything, and they're running out of money, and it's like, well, I'm going to teach other people how to do this, and it's like, well, you're going to teach other people how to run out of money,
mm,
I mean, because that's what so I would say to people who are contemplating working online, you'll always find somebody who wants to teach you something and who wants to charge you to teach you something. So just make sure and do your due diligence on these so-called gurus who are more than willing to allow you to part with your hard-earned cash. Make sure you know who you're getting the information from, and as well that it's accurate.
Yeah, and I think there are some great, whether it's mentors, service providers, gurus, whatever you want to say, but there are also plenty of snake oil salesmen, charlatan that they took a Saturday class and they now they say that they're certified and they don't offer a lot of value and they don't have much experience. And so I don't think that there's, the whole industry isn't bad, but I do think you have to be careful on when you're looking at whether or not they're going to provide the value you need and whether or not they're qualified is definitely an easy area to make a mistake, but a great one to learn from.
Right. And just, the easiest way to do that is establish a potential return on investment. Say, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of money on this education or training. I want to achieve X amount of return on my investment, and then you can evaluate whether you were successful or not and move on from
Hmm.
there.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice, great takeaway. So, second question now that I'd like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Well, if they're just getting started into a digital content creation business or online or whatever, then the biggest piece of advice, and maybe in a more traditional business setting as well, that I can give you is get familiar with artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
This is a game changer, not only for creators, but also for process people, anybody who's producing something for sale. You can harness AI to perform and produce the more mundane aspects of within those aspects of your business, and it frees you up to use your brain power to work on your business instead of in your business. So harness AI for your processes, get it to write out your HR kind of stuff if you're in that kind of an environment. Look at the things that you do every day, identify what AI might be able to take over from you, and your life's going to be a lot easier.
I think that that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not there very often. I probably should go there more often. Betsy Wuebker, Betsy Wuebker. You can also find me at passingthrough.com, passingthrough, thru.com, all one word. That's the travel blog, and there's a contact form there. Or reach out to me on Facebook, send me a DM.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again, Betsy, for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for
Thank
all of
you,
you that
Devin.
absolutely. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So, just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey of success. And on that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again, Betsy, for coming on the podcast, and
Thank you.
wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin. Pleasure.